What's good, y'all? And welcome back to another preseason preview video. In today's video, we're going over the Minnesota Timberwolves. In case this is your first preseason preview video of mine that you're seeing, basically what I do is go over the offseason, give a little recap there, and then look into the future and try to see what we can expect in this upcoming season. I'm going to be dropping videos on all 30 NBA teams, so make sure you check out the channel for the ones that I already uploaded, and then make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on the ones that I upload in the future. Once again, I want to remind you guys that in the description there's a link to Roundball Renaissance. I will be making my appearance on his channel. Should be the day after this video is actually uploaded, so make sure you check that out. I'm going to be talking about my Knicks. But without further ado, let's just jump right into it and get to the reason you guys are here, and that is the Minnesota Timberwolves. Last year was a very successful year for them, I would say. Record-wise in the regular season, doesn't look anything crazy. They ended up being the 6th seed in the Western Conference, going 49-33. But when it came to the playoffs, they were very, very successful, beating the Lakers in the first round in 5 games. Then moving on, they beat the Golden State Warriors in 5 games. And they made it all the way to the Western Conference Finals in back-to-back years, even though they changed up their roster a bunch. They met the OKC Thunder, where they unfortunately did come up short, and they lost in 5 games. But the Minnesota Timberwolves have consistently been making deep playoff runs for a few years now, and now it kind of comes to the question on when will they get over that hump and make that actual finals appearance? Will it be this year? That's what we're hoping to find out in today's video. They really didn't make too many off-season moves, but there still were a few ones I want to highlight. So let's just jump right into it and talk about the moves they made. Before we talk about the guys that they brought in, I do want to quick highlight the main guy that they lost, because it really only was one. That is, of course, Nickeil Alexander-Walker. They lost him in free agency. He signed a new deal with the Atlanta Hawks. And although this is their only real big loss this offseason, I do think that it's going to be really felt in Minnesota. Nickeil Alexander-Walker was a big part of their depth coming off their bench. He was a great 3-and-D guy, but also can handle the ball a little bit and you know, kind of relieve some of the pressure off of Anthony Edwards and some of the other perimeter creators on this team. He shot the 3-ball pretty well the last few years, but where I think that the Timberwolves will really be missing him is on the defensive end. He's one of the best perimeter, like high intensity defenders, especially with all of his length. He's 6'5", but also has like super long arms, really disruptful, poking balls away, getting into the passing lanes, and that really boded well for Minnesota's super intense defensive scheme. They do have some guys on the roster that I think could help mitigate the loss of Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and we will talk about them in a few minutes, but I do think that this is a big loss for the Timberwolves and shouldn't really be taken too lightly. But like I said, Nickeil was pretty much their only big loss to like a real important rotational piece. They also lost Luka Garza. He signed a new deal with the Boston Celtics. But now let's take a look at who is coming to Minnesota and who the Timberwolves added this offseason. Again, it's not many moves, but there are a few that I want to just quick highlight. The first one came from the draft, where they drafted Joan Berringer with the 17th overall pick. Joan is a super young, super raw center from France. Right now, it feels like France is just running the NBA prospects. They just are loading the pool up with a lot of really good young prospects in the last few years. So it looks like the Timberwolves got one themselves here with Joan. But like I said, he is very raw, very young. He's only 18 years old still, and he will start the NBA season only being 18 years old. His birthday is in November, so he'll quickly turn 19, but still, the fact that they were able to draft a teenager at 17 overall, I feel like that's pretty good. But besides the age being a big plus for Joan, he also is super athletic. He has good size, being about 6'10", with a 7-foot plus wingspan, and he is just really good instinctively on defense. He can pretty much do whatever you really want from your center, switch out to the perimeter, guard the pick and roll and drop, hedge. He can obviously block some shots, and in the summer league he was blocking a bunch of shots. He just moves really, really fluid for his big 6'10" frame, and then also, like I said, with his athleticism, it allows him to move his feet well, to jump really high, to really use his strength. All around, just he's like a physical specimen. Like I said, super young. He only picked up a basketball in 2021 also, so I really like, the sky is the limit for him, I feel like. But I will say, I don't know how much he'll really play in his rookie year, considering he's so young and so raw. I really like him as a prospect, but as like a win now, impact now type of guy, I don't really know how much of a role he'll have. And that was pretty much the only big addition the Timberwolves made this offseason, but they still did make some other moves surrounding around their own free agents, including Naz Reid and Julius Randle. Both of these guys got brand new contracts. Naz Reid signed a 5-year, $125 million contract. That last year is a player option as well, so he'll be making about $25 million a year for the foreseeable future. And then, of course, Julius Randle, he signed a 3-year, $100 million contract. That last year on Julius's contract is also a player option. He'll be making about $33 million a year. Both of those contracts, I do think, are pretty good value for the Timberwolves. When you look at Naz Reid, he's been one of the best six men of the year for the last few seasons now. He won the award 2 years ago and still continued his dominance coming off the bench as just a offensive powerhouse, as a power forward slash center, just all around really important for what the Timberwolves do, and he deservedly got paid. And again, I do think it's pretty good value for the Timberwolves. And then same thing with Julius Randle. I know a lot of people are pretty polarized around Julius Randle. Some people think he sucks, some people think he's amazing. I do think that Timberwolves fans have kind of came around on him now that they got to see him for a full season last year, and that he is still a good player and a high impactful player. So for him only making about $33 million, the way that some other stars are getting super big, $50, $60 million contracts, I definitely think that that's pretty good value for him. And last but not least, they also re-signed Joe Ingles to a 1-year veteran minimum contract. So don't worry, Timberwolves fans, Jingle and Joe will still be on the sideline, inbounding the ball on those sideline out of bounds plays. And now that we went over the offseason for the Timberwolves, let's take a look at a potential rotation we could be seeing. The starting lineup stays the same, where we have Mike Conley, Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels, Julius Randle, and Rudy Gobert. And then off the bench, we have Rob Dillingham, Dante DiVincenzo, Terrence Shannon Jr., and Naz Reid. Now, usually I'll wait until I talk about the team a little bit before bringing up some of the notable reserves, but as you just saw, I only have 9 players in their potential rotation for the Timberwolves right now, and that's because they really are missing like a true backup power forward. There are a few guys that I could insert into this lineup to make it a full round 10-man rotation, but those guys really are too small. Like, it would be 4 guards off the bench, and I don't really know how practical that would really be. The guy that I'm talking about, who I would insert as that 10th man, of course, is Jalen Clark. He was a rookie last year and was pretty solid. He stepped up and had some pretty good minutes when the Timberwolves were dealing with some injury last year, and he did his thing. He shot the ball well, he played off ball, defended a little bit. That was pretty much it, and that's all you really need from your role players and like end of the bench type of guys. So I was tempted to insert him into this lineup, but then of course you would have a bench lineup of Rob Dillingham, Dante DiVincenzo, Terrence Shannon Jr., and Jalen Clark. All of those guys are guards. Terrence Shannon Jr. is a little bit bigger than some of those other guys, so he can maybe slide as like a slightly undersized small forward. But yeah, I really didn't feel comfortable enough to have just 4 guards and Naz Reid off the bench, so I kept it as a 9-man rotation. In order to mitigate some of that, what I do think will happen is, of course, we'll have some double big lineups where you have Rudy Gobert and Julius Randle. I'm going to count him as a big, even though he's really a power forward. He still has like size, so I'll classify him as a big. Or Rudy Gobert, Naz Reid, Julius Randle and Naz Reid will be together a bunch too. And then I think a key part of this center slash power forward rotation will end up being Jaden McDaniels. Of course, he's their starting small forward, but being 6'9" with the great length that he has, he can play power forward. So I do think, especially in some 3-guard lineups, we will see them kind of downsize a little bit and have Jaden McDaniels just run backup power forward. But besides how the Wolves will move past the lack of depth now that they lost Nickeil Alexander-Walker, I do think one of the other really important storyline surrounding the Timberwolves this offseason is their backup point guard, or not even just their backup, but their point guard situation in general. Mike Conley is their starter. He was their starter for 90% of the games last year as well. But last year, you started to really see the age of Mike Conley come out. He's been around in the league for 10 plus, 15 plus years now at this point. Super long, super successful career. But his age did seem like it was starting to catch up to him a little bit, where, he still is a great three-point shooter. Obviously, he has the passing chop still, but he doesn't move the same with the ball. He doesn't really, get to the rim as good as he used to in the past. And a lot of that seemed to really lead to struggles offensively. If it wasn't really coming from Anthony Edwards or Julius Randle, there really wasn't much creation going on besides that. So that is definitely a super important thing that the Timberwolves have to look to really fix this year. And two of the guys that I think they will be looking to help that situation is, of course, Donte DiVincenzo. He played a lot of point guard last year for them. I definitely think that Donte is best as a two guard, though, more of a off the ball movement type of shooter, catch and shoot guy. But he does have the ball handling and the passing chops to be a point guard. So I'm sure they'll lean a little bit on him. And really who they're looking to make a big jump this year is, of course, Rob Dillingham. He was a rookie last year. They traded one of their most valuable late first-round picks, I believe it was 2030, to the San Antonio Spurs in order to bring in Rob Dillingham last year. He didn't really have a solidified role. There were some games where he went out there and played a big role, but it wasn't like an every game type of thing. This year, it seems like he is slated to be their backup point guard, to be in the rotation for majority of the games, and it's really going to be his first time where he has that solidified role, and hopefully he is NBA ready and is able to produce. The biggest knock on Rob Dillingham is, of course, his size, only being listed at 6'1". Some people say he might be closer to 5'11", and then also his super skinny frame. Obviously, every year, teams and players release these footage and videos where they're hard in the gym, pumping iron, getting big, getting swole. I assume that Rob Dillingham is doing that and gaining some weight, gaining some pounds. But obviously we can't really tell if that helps or not until he gets on the court and plays against other NBA players. I am a pretty big fan of Rob Dillingham. I think that he can be a good NBA player, and the Timberwolves really are relying on him to take that jump to be a solidified backup point guard. But besides that, the Timberwolves are going to still have one of the best defenses in the league. When you have Rudy Gobert holding down your defense, holding down your paint, you're going to be good. And luckily for the Timberwolves, it's not just Rudy Gobert, though. I already kind of hinted at the great size that they have in their starting lineup with Julius Randle and Jaden McDaniels, Anthony Edwards. They have the size, the length, and then pretty much all of those guys compete defensively. Jaden McDaniels is one of the best big wing defenders we have in the NBA, one of the best perimeter defenders we have in the NBA. Anthony Edwards is one of the best defensive, I don't want to say defensive-oriented stars, but out of all the star players, Anthony Edwards is one of the better defenders out of that group of guys there too. So I really like that aspect of it. And then, of course, off the bench, you have Donte DiVincenzo, who competes, Terrence Shannon Jr., who competes. And just all around, I am confident that the Timberwolves will still have one of the better defenses in the league. And then, of course, when you have a guy like Anthony Edwards as your star player, Julius Randle as your secondary guy, and then some of these other just offensive pieces like a Naz Reid, like a Donte, like a Mike Conley, I do think that they will have a good enough offense to still be good. This is a very good and talented team. Even with the loss of Nickeil Alexander-Walker, I still really like their top 7 to 6 guys or 6 to 7 guys. I do think that they have a lot of good top-end talent on this roster. The depth does concern me just a little bit to lose a guy as good as Nickeil and not really replace him with a solidified guy. They're really just looking to grow internally to help replace some of his production. Could happen, just scares me a little bit. And I kind of hinted at the notable reserves a little bit before. Like I said, Jalen Clark is definitely the 10th guy that is slated to be in this rotation. Again, though, position-wise, it just is a little hard for me to find him a spot and minutes to really get in this rotation. If the Timberwolves go a 10-deep rotation, though, I definitely expect Jalen Clark to be included in it. And then also Joan Berringer, like I said, he is very, very raw. But I do think that if there's any center injury or big injury, he will definitely slot in and come in there, play some games, and maybe he'll surprise us all and just be way more NBA ready than we thought. Could happen, definitely is a possibility. I don't really expect it though, so he'll just be staying in the notable reserves for now. And now it is time to talk about my ceiling, floor, and expectations for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Starting off with their ceiling, I could see them being as high as the 3 seed. Like I said, this is a really talented team, especially their top 6 to 7 guys. And I definitely think that that is good enough to carry them to a high seed in this Western Conference. When you look at the playoffs, obviously there's a lot of really heavy hitters, sluggers in this conference. But like I mentioned at the top of the video, the Timberwolves have consistently been making deep playoff runs, back-to-back Western Conference Finals appearances for them. So at their ceiling, I could see them going back to that and being a Western Conference Finals team again. It would be really, really hard for me to pick them over some of those teams that they could be seeing in the Western Conference, like a Denver, like a OKC, like a Houston. Can they beat them? Maybe, yeah, but I think I am pretty confident putting their ceiling at the Western Conference Finals. Then moving on to their floor, I can see them being as low as the 7th seed and in the play-in tournament. This says a little bit more about how I feel about the Western Conference as a whole than how I feel about the Minnesota Timberwolves. I do just think that there are loads of really, really good teams, and in this situation, the Timberwolves would be feeling a little bit more of their lack of depth. I do think they will be able to win the play-in tournament and make the playoffs, but at that point, they would have to go up against one of those super heavy hitting teams like the Thunder, like the Nuggets. And as a first round matchup, that is really, really difficult. So at their floor, I see them being a really tough first round exit. And then when you look at my expectations for them, I expect them to be right around that 6 and 5 seed, kind of like where they were last year. But, you know, when it comes to the playoffs, I do think that they are one of the better playoff teams in the league. So I expect them to make it past the first round and maybe be like a really tough second round exit. Again, I can see them making that deep playoff run and making it to the conference finals, but it is just a little tough for me to say that I expect them to be back at that Western Conference Finals. So I do think that they will end up being a very tough second round exit. What do you guys think though? Let me know in the comments below how good you think the Timberwolves will be this season. Where will they end in the standings and how far will they make it in the playoffs? Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave it a like, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. In the description, there's links to all my social medias, so make sure you follow me on all those to keep up to date with me. Catch y'all.